Welcome to this episode of the Greater Phoenix Chambers podcast, Let's Talk Business Phoenix, with me, your host, Todd Sanders, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber. In each episode, we tackle important issues and subjects affecting our businesses, our community, and the state today. Through relevant, timely topics, this podcast serves as the business community's voice with the mission of championing business growth, identifying problems that restrict economic development, and conveying community leaders to move Phoenix forward.
Let's Talk Business Phoenix was produced in partnership with Ideas Collide, an agency offering a full suite of custom marketing solutions for your brand's unique challenges. Make a connection at ideascollide.com.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. We're thrilled to have Sal Bracale, who is the Vice President and Director of Operations for Moon Valley Nurseries, an institution here in the Valley and in Arizona for a number of years. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Well, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and perhaps something that we wouldn't know about you from just reading about you on the internet.
Sure. I've worked for Moon Valley Nurseries pretty close to its inception. We started in 1995. I joined towards the tail end of 1997. And actually came to work at one of our seasonal Christmas tree lots. And
I've seen them pop up.
Yeah. It was, I'd worked at a nursery prior to that. Yep. And the owner at the time had really pushed me hard to come into the nurseries. I told him no probably 1,000 times. And I had no idea what kind of business model this was. So I just thought it'd be what I came from before. And that's not fun. And I loved working at the tree lot. And he kind of asked me a point blank question. Well, did you like working for me here? Well, yeah. What makes you think I would do something different at my nurseries than I do at the tree lots? And I kind of thought about it for a little bit, sunk in, and come Christmas and New Year's, I should probably go work for that guy. He was pretty fun to work with and had a really good time. So been here ever since. And I think you said you're coming up on your 27-year anniversary. Correct. In a couple days. Yeah. I'll start my 27-year here pretty quick. Well, congratulations. Yeah, thank you.
And Arizona native, I think you said?
Correct. Arizona native, born and raised. Believe it or not, a lot of our employees are. Our founder is. A lot of our veteran, especially employees, are locals.
Well, and it's nice to have a family-owned local company in Arizona, especially to your point about Christmas when you're out there looking for your tree.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able for us I'm in Moon Valley to turn the corner and there it is. So
yeah,
we appreciate that. Well, a little bit about the history. You mentioned the founder. Obviously, there was something about the company that got your attention. You weren't planning to go that direction.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about Moon Valley Nurseries, the history and what they're all about.
So really, kind of back to that family-owned roots type of mentality. So the founder grew up in Arizona, grew up in the nursery trade, and his family started nurseries in the 50s. So he kind of learned what it was about in that then. And as he got older, started his own business and company. And he was a pretty young guy when I came to work for him even. And had that one nursery right there. We started at 7th Street in Hearn, so in the Moon Valley Country Club area where our name's from. And started with there was probably 12 of us really originally.
That's it.
Pretty small group. And we provided a service that still to this day isn't really being duplicated by a lot of folks, which is coming right to the source to pick out your plants and then having us come out and do the work, do the installation for you. So when I'm trying to explain this to somebody who might not be familiar with our business is think about going and having somebody install your tile to remodel your flooring or your bathroom or kitchen or something like that, but they also manufacture the tile. That's us. So you kind of get to come to the place that really does it all and there's no delays in getting product. You don't have to wait on something to show up. We have it.
Well, I know we got a tree from you all a few years ago, and it was nice to be able to just go pick it out, and then it was in our house and it was planted.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is where you have questions, you can just go across the street and ask those questions.
There, or a phone call away. Yeah.
So 7th Street in Hearn, the original location, grown certainly beyond that. And then I was out of state and I noticed that it was surprising to see Moon Valley Nursery sign outside of Arizona.
Yeah. So in 2004, we grew into the Nevada, Las Vegas area, and 2008 into Texas. And shortly around like 2010, 2011, we had some farming in California previously, but we started putting retail stores there. And that's grown from Los Angeles down to San Diego up to now the San Francisco, kind of the Bay Area. And more recently, we've grown from Houston, Texas to Austin, Texas, and now Dallas. San Antonio is a recent addition to this year. And as we speak, I have employees, boots on the ground, doing hiring and training in Florida to get ready for next year's opening in Florida.
Wow, that's aggressive.
Very, yeah.
Well, since you're the VP of operations, I'll ask you, it's easy to have that culture that you talked about 27 years ago in an operation that has 1 or 2 or 3 stores. But when you're talking about almost a national operation now. How do you maintain the sort of that secret sauce, the Moon juice, right, that we have on 7th Street in Florida or in Texas or in California?
You're gonna laugh. So we have a team. Our one of our long tenured employees. He actually went to high school with the founder. He's on our lunar launch team.
Okay.
So he's out there helping us with recruiting and training, and he's there. We have 2 different waves of teams that come through, as a matter of fact, and we do a big recruiting, hiring, training push in the early weeks once we get the nursery set up and the plants and everything there. Obviously, continue training. If he has another location to move on to, we have a second wave of that team that comes in and kind of continually assists with training. So we have a veteran foreman that'll help out with the construction crews and do essentially ride-alongs and really run the crew while we're doing installations. We have a veteran manager that's there to help kind of walk through with some of the trainees and so on that are there that might be new to their positions. And we have a veteran salesperson that can kind of explain to employees how we design and how we go to homes. Maybe some of the questions we were kind of talking a little bit ago, some of the questions we get asked in the nursery trade, they're not your normal questions for just plants. It might be pest related, it might be weather related, it might be turf, that kind of thing. So, well,
and given the national, I lived in Florida for a time, and certainly maybe the invasive species there are much different than here. So that's another, I think, an area where you have to adjust.
Correct. And that's been, I've had to be involved in that as well. I enjoy that part because it kind of reminds me of how we started from years ago. When we go, there's a little investigating in some cases, looking at local growers, looking at other maybe retail nurseries, absolutely looking at some of the neighborhoods and doing some of that research there. And my recommendation is always to start with a slightly smaller palette and kind of see what people are asking for. And that way we can kind of grow into, as growers ourselves, you don't want to overgrow product and have all this stuff that somebody might not be wanting or interested, or to your point, maybe is invasive in those areas. So start off with, say, 50 items instead of 300 items. See what people are asking for and kind of fill in the blanks and start growing stuff as we're getting requests.
It's clearly working. Yeah. So congratulations. So, given that, the expansion not only in Phoenix but nationally, what we're hearing from almost every business we talk to is it's very difficult to find workforce. Even in the economy slowing down a little bit right now, hopefully for a soft landing, but that's still a challenge. Talk to us about workforce. How do you stay ahead of the curve?
Well, really good recruiters. That's been a big part of it. To your kind of question earlier, having a good culture, making sure when somebody comes into our business that they understand that we're a fun place to work and there's money they can make, and there'll be just a fun working environment and room for growth. I think that's another thing that's actually really helped us out a lot in recent years, especially as we've grown the business. There's a tremendous opportunity for them to grow their careers and do more than just whatever it is they got hired in.
You're kind of the poster child for that,
100%,
right?
Yeah.
Somebody right now, some kid right now in the Christmas tree lot, who knows, VP of operations someday.
Yeah, absolutely. Our CEO started at the tree lots as well.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
My kid comes home for Christmas. I'm going to send him over to the tree lot.
Send them to us. We'll get them to work. Yeah.
You mentioned the fact that you grow trees, you grow your own vegetation. Is that common?
Yes and no. So most nurseries that grow stick to the wholesale side of it. They only want to do X amount of production. They want to sell directly to the industry, to contractors, to developers, things like that. The growing and retailing side of it is different. And I think really because there's more demanding clients at that point. You're going to answer a lot more questions. You got to stand behind your product, warranties and so on. With us doing the installation, when we're standing behind it, we're also standing behind that replacement, which can have a large cost. So there's a lot of nurseries that will just try to broker something and lack of a better way of saying it, turn and burn it to their retail clients. Think like a box store might, and they're not really involved in all that back end, which takes a lot of planning and production.
Right. So interesting that you would choose that business model. Why that business model then?
It sets us apart, for starters, it sets us apart. And then really, I think as I grew into the business, what I recognized is the founder's pretty particular about having super high quality product. That is what set us apart initially, is the super high quality where everything's straight, everything's the right height. They're trimmed at a certain time, fertilized a certain way, soils handled and done a different way to make sure it's kind of, for example, in Arizona, we have really alkaline soil and really poor drainage. So we have to have certain soil that'll accommodate that. And when you're buying something from somebody, say in Florida, that might not work.
Right. Much different soil there.
Correct. So that's been, I'd say, the initial difference for us. As we've grown, I'd say we kind of grew into our shoes a little. We really started understanding, and I think social media and platforms that do reviews helped us suggest and adjust accordingly. But customer service became a huge priority to us, and I'd say customer experience. So a lot more emphasis on from the growing to that construction side of things, and what the customer saw, heard, and how involved they were in their project really changed for us. And I think that's been one of the reasons we've grown as much as we have into other regions now. And
I'm sure for you, especially on the operations side during COVID, that presented probably some additional challenges that you had to really think about in a different way.
Yeah. So, the curbside delivery thing, there for a little bit was
I remember
a little more popular for us, but we were one of the few businesses that were actually allowed to be open. The fact that we sell edible items, fruit, citrus, veggies and herbs, allowed us to stay open, which is amazing for us. And got ourselves in front of maybe some clients that had nothing else to do or nowhere else to spend some time, or maybe do some home projects. A lot of folks were at home and working in their home offices and realized how loud their home offices were, or maybe how warm their home offices were. So it kind of created a out of nowhere demand for folks to come in and really upgrade that part of their home so that their house was nicer and a little more livable when they're working in their environment all day long. So that was kind of a fun challenge for us to kind of grow through and live through.
Given that we went through a pretty significant summer in terms of heat, I know some of our plants died. How did you manage, or how are you managing heat from a vegetation perspective, and also from a people perspective, keeping them safe?
So, first things in the nurseries, we have a pretty extensive safety program, and, hydration and having things there for almost like a Gatorade with little products called squenchers and things along those lines. Even more so when we're in the field doing installation. I feel like that work can be more exerting at times. So making sure guys get ample break times, things like that. Believe it or not, wearing long sleeve t-shirts and that.
Really?
Yeah, it keeps the sun from baking you as bad. And when you do start to sweat, it helps almost work like a swamp cooler would on your body. So it helps you out that way. And just kind of being smart about it in that regards, even not drinking ice cold water when it's that hot. Me and you think it's refreshing.
Right.
When you're doing really physically exerting work like that, it actually messes you up and makes you feel worse.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay. And then from a vegetation standpoint, we even saw cacti dying.
Sure.
How are you dealing with that? What are you telling folks?
Well, first of all, is making sure that we have things going in the right spot as we're, helping with installation initially, making sure we're putting the right plants in the right spot. There's certainly some requests for things that can take the heat and some drought tolerant plants I feel like that's been on the rise for years. But the existing plants, it's kind of understanding what to trim, when to trim, whether or not they should fertilize, with what products to fertilize. Some of those questions, it feels a little more old school in a sense, where years ago there wasn't immediate access to these questions and stuff for folks to be able to just come in and get an answer all they wanted. They had to come to us to ask it because they had to come to an expert. And I think this summer has revisited that a little bit, where folks are coming back to us and asking more questions because it's not as easy to diagnose on their own, or not as easy just to look up. And some of it, honestly, is just a lot of these plants hadn't been maintained in a long time, and they needed some care that they probably were overdue for anyways. And I'll bet you over half of the questions we get is there's something that happened to their irrigation system they just didn't know about.
Wow. So then everything sort of dominoed.
Yes, correct. Okay. And if you go on vacation and your plants don't get water for a week, when you come back, it's hard to get it to come back and look great again.
Yes.
Well,
and I know on that front, you do a lot in terms of teaching and instruction. I think that's also related to changes in technology. Tell us a little bit about how technology has played a role, not only in the work that you do, but also how you're teaching people about sort of what to do in extreme drought or with pests and things like that.
Sure. I'll start with how we work with clients and that, and actually our employees in the field too. We're able to, just sending text messages with videos in it internally or through WhatsApp or something like that, and being able to share videos of, hey, this is going on at our nursery. This is how you do it. Very recently, we were putting up what we call hoop houses. So they're temporary greenhouses with plastic and PVC. And we put those up at really kind of specialty nurseries that are a little colder than others. But we have some employees that haven't had to do that in years past, or they're new to our company or something like that. So we're able to send out obviously some photos of it, some videos of some how-tos, a quick little blueprint plan, a supply list, things like that, and quickly message our team on how to do that. So the internal has been amazing, being able to use these smartphones the way we do. The other thing we do is using, cameras like GoPros, or of course, using our phones once again, and we're able to take some videos of various subjects. Maybe there's a caterpillar that comes into town from time to time that'll get on certain plants, tacomas and bougainvilleas and grapes. And when we see that, it feels like it just happens overnight, and it feels like it just invades people's homes. So when we get those calls, they'll start trickling in. All of a sudden, it's 50 a day per store kind of calls. And so to quickly remind everybody as to what product to use and how to do it and things like that, we'll send out or create a quick little video of a how-to. And that evolved here recently into every single disease pest you can think of that we've dealt with. We created how-to brochures that have a QR code on it, which of course is new nowadays, that it can take them to a video so they can see how to treat it and kind of get walked through what it is. Having good visual pictures up at our nursery for people to identify things with. They'll come in and have plants with whatever the pest is or disease in some cases, and they'll have it in a baggie and they're not really sure what it is, and we're able to show them on the board. I think from a confidence standpoint, it helps them know that they're for sure treating the right thing. Being a young guy, I mean, I was again, 16-year-old kid at one point doing this. I had people come in, and even though I'd learned from veterans that knew what they were talking about and taught me, and I knew what I was talking about, my age, people would look at you and absolutely go, who's here that knows what they're talking about? And just look over your shoulder, look for the guy with gray hair. And, this helps with, we don't have that many 16-year-old guys anymore, but anybody who's new to our business or new to the industry, it helps them be confident to identify what it is that somebody might have and be able to give them the right information so they're getting the right treatment.
Well, what a game changer for everybody. And I'm assuming for employees too. I imagine that when Sal 26 years or 27 years ago came in, you weren't learning online. You probably had stacks of books that you had to read. Yeah, I looked like somebody going through college with just stacks and stacks of books. They're black and white, hand-drawn photos of the plant, so there was terrible identification. Somebody come in with a leaf, and if you go to the book and you had it right, you actually named the plant right. When you look it up in the book itself, it would literally be a hand-drawn picture of that plant. It wasn't a nice picture, so you could actually identify it. So you're still guessing a little. Coming into this trade early on, I was really lucky. I had a lot of veteran nurserymen that had been in the industry, been in the landscape industry or the nursery industry for 10, 20 years, even then, that they were unbelievably gracious at teaching me and showing me what to do and put me under the wing. So it helped me a lot. And I've tried to kind of pay that forward. Pay it forward now. Absolutely. Well, it sounds like in the time you've been there, which obviously is a good amount of time, there's a lot of change. Sure. Part of what we're hearing about, obviously a lot in Arizona and nationally, is the idea that we need to also be more sustainable. Talk to us a little bit about sustainability efforts at Moon Valley Nurseries. Yeah. There's a lot of things on the horizon. There's a lot of things we've already done. Creating our own soils, and using, for example, something we've done in more recent years is take our own green waste and have that reproduced into mulch. So we can use it, sell it in bags or use it in the nurseries. That helps us tremendously. There's cost-cutting savings there too in the long run that can help us out, but really it's just nice to be able to use our own material and know where it came from, really truly know what it is. And then our own boxes, we've created our own boxes now for years. That's something we've done forever. And again, knowing what lumber it is, how old the lumber it is, making sure that those excess pieces of lumber, when we do a cut, can get reproduced and chipped and ground and used again in our mulch, which is pretty cool. But having the boxes made by ourselves, again, there's some cost cutting there, but really those boxes don't fall apart. And there's a quality when you go to that stuff. So we're not having to replace these things on a regular basis, which again, you're not just cutting down a tree to create new boxes. So it's fantastic. It's a win-win. Yeah. Automated irrigation systems. You would think it's a no-brainer to see people use them in the nursery industry. Not really. And that's been new in more recent years. I think it's because of the technology that was there. A lot of the new technology now allows you to run these machines from an app, from your phone, from a desktop. So you don't have to go into the field. And if we have a 118-degree day here in Phoenix, we can turn our system on instead of watering twice a day to 3 times a day just by going to a desk and adjusting a time or length of time or something like that. Our teams in the field, if they walk up and down the aisles and they happen to see a row that looks like it's maybe a little dry or not as happy as it ought to, can literally jump on their phone and look up that line, look up that tree, look up that row, turn it on and give it a quick little jolt of water, and it helps a lot. Things behind the scenes that you can never imagine. Yeah, absolutely. And getting different and better every day. So you obviously mentioned water, critical component. How are you thinking about water conservation, given that we're all thinking about it today? Sure. Well,
right back to those irrigation systems. So you're able to, when we were watering years ago with water wands, for example, a hand hose with a wand on the end of it, it could be somebody watering for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 10 minutes, not really controlled. When they'd go from plant to plant, some of that water would get on the ground. And they're just, again, if they overwater, that water would eventually wash the box, end up on the ground. So you're not using it all, which in turn creates weeds. Then you got to go back and treat or manually pull the weeds. So there's a lot of headaches that come along with it. And going to these automated systems, we're able to get drenched to the bottom of the box, but not beyond. So you're not wasting the water. There's little tweaks and things you do internally in the nursery. We use these spitters that spray at 180 degrees. So we put them in the middle of the box so they don't overspray and get outside of the box. They don't end up on the ground. They control very much so the quantity of water that's going in. We make sure that there's the right emitter quantities per size and container and so on to make sure it's getting, again, to the bottom of the box and not beyond. You're running them for that set amount of time, so you're able to control gallons. Our farms in the last year, one of our farms in California, we were able to reduce our water usage from the city by 83% by putting just a couple of these practices in place. It sounds like a no-brainer, but they're really vital.
And it sounds like for the bottom line as well.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. And again, the bottom line, you start getting into weed control. It's either labor or some sort of herbicide. Well, we prefer not to put a ton of herbicides in our nurseries. We'd rather do it by hand. Well, that gets expensive. So if you can do these things, and it just not create those headaches in the first place, it's tremendous. Running our irrigation systems over the top of the boxes, and when you plug the water line into those irrigation lines, we do it right over the box. If there's a leak, it leaks into the box, not on the ground. It's just these little...
The one you wouldn't think of.
Yeah. The old guys in the industry will teach you that stuff and help the new guys learn that, and then helping them understand the why so they see it and they continue it and keep doing it for years.
It's great to hear that you're so conscious of water. Let me switch gears a little bit. You think about design trends, fashion trends, things change over time. Same thing in your business?
Oh, yeah.
You see what's the next thing? What's popular? What do you think is around the corner?
So me being in Arizona as long as I have, I can tell you when a house was built by looking at its landscape. If it hasn't been remodeled, I can tell you if that was a house made in the 70s, the 90s, early 2000s.
So what's the mark? How can you tell something from the 80s?
Oh boy, you see a lot of pine trees, for example, some eucalyptus, things like that. African sumacs, Australian bottles. There's certain species you just see it and go, yeah, that was when that was installed.
And today, what are you seeing?
Oh, a lot more things like red push pistache, for example, is a really popular variety. Early 2000s, Museum Palo Verdes kind of came into the market. That's continued as a trend. That's still there, but we're adding in new species like some hybrid desert willows that have a real pretty pink purple flower to them. Another low water user, it's kind of a popular one. It's also popular in the city because it's not real large. You can put them near or around power lines safer than some of the other species. So it's been... So from pine trees, which were probably pretty thirsty to where we are today, it sounds like people are also thinking about it from a water usage perspective. Water usage, cleanliness, for sure. Safe. I think a lot of people are trying to put in these huge towering trees that are unsafe when we get bad winds. So there's some of that. And also just style. People have a different style, and it's absolutely changed. The things are planted now in straight lines. So when you think about the way a modern home is, again, we'll use Arizona for example. You go to Arcadia, you can tell these new homes when they're built, they have a more modern roof line. They have a more modern, they have the square steps going up to their driveway or from their driveway to their house. It's not just a curb or a sidewalk anymore. And planning is the same way. People want things in linear rows. We're doing rows of hedges, sometimes in threes, so tall, medium, small. They'll have things in different colors. It might be dark green, gray, and then white when we're doing. So it's just, you see those trends, and I'm probably making it difficult for people to imagine. In my mind, it's simple and easy to see because we do this all the time. But there's an absolute trend you can see where you can really tell when a house has been built. And again, there's just plant palettes. People have gone through things where they understand it's more work than something else is. They don't want to deal with it anymore. They want low maintenance, easy, low care, lower trimming, lower pruning, lower water, more sun resilient. So. And you all can advise on that. Like, here's what depending on what your goals are, we can kind of get you there depending on the strategy. Absolutely. And part of it is just understanding what somebody wants. Like you and I might have different styles for what our home interiors look like. So, do you want that modern gray and white look, or do you want to go with maybe some stack stone or something that's, a little more classic? The exterior home's the same way. So we'll get somebody that really, and I'm this way growing up in Arizona as a desert guy. I kind of want the palm tree paradise around my pool. I want to go out back and go out and have that staycation look in my backyard. And there's a lot of folks that love that and want that. And there's other people that absolutely want nothing to do with palm trees. Either they just don't care for them, or they came from an environment where they're used to it, say from California or something. They don't want to mess with them. And they want the desert look. They want agaves. They want upright cactus. They want desert trees. So we kind of go with the flow based on what the customer really likes. And then from there, it's pretty easy. I'd say most of the times when you've decided you want a Tuscan landscape, there's 10 main staples anymore that people kind of stick to on a palette. I'm sure if we both went to a restaurant right now and asked them, what does everybody order here? They're going to tell you the 2-3 things right away. It has that feel to it at times. And then I'd say we stay ahead of that curve because of the fact that we work with big builders, developers, contractors, and landscapers. So you can kind of see what architects and so on are putting in, and what cities and municipalities are putting in. And once you see these big master plan communities put a bunch of stuff in, people will kind of follow suit if it's not already part of their palette.
Being the trend. Yeah, it seems like we're moving out of the Tuscan now into more the modern that you talked about.
Yeah.
Seems to be more prevalent.
Modern is definitely prevalent. Tuscan depends. I feel like if you have a little larger property, if you're a quarter acre or larger, you still see that a decent amount. And again, it's been popular ever since some of these modern desert trees started getting grown, these hybrids without thorns, for example. Desert has just been a staple for us. It always will be here. Right. It's where we're at. Right. Heck, some of the cities that we do business in require it, so they don't have a choice. And of course, they get frustrated usually, and understandably so, that they can't do something different. But that's always going to be something we do. And if anything, it'll just be maybe some species within that thought process. New variety of agave or something that's being grown that'll kind of trend and be the new thing.
So let's talk about citrus. We all love citrus, but I know, at least in Moon Valley, for instance, people were concerned about citrus in the home because of the fact that you could have an invasion of roof rats.
Sure.
What should we be thinking about when we because we all want citrus in our, I know I do.
Yeah.
What are the things to think about when it comes to that?
Well, a couple things, the 4 C's, if you're familiar with that for Arizona. Citrus is a part of the 4 C's we have here. So everybody wants citrus, and it always will be that way. And fruit trees as well, apples and peaches and plums, but citrus especially. Most folks moving here from other cities never had that as an option. So it's huge. Every real estate agent I've worked with tells me they want citrus in the home so they can help sell the house to somebody in the future. It's going with varieties, I'd say, that you're going to eat the most. Think about it from that perspective. If you're going to eat it, if you're going to use it, you're not going to have a lot of litter on the ground, so you're not going to have the roof rats. If you're going to put a tree in the ground that you never eat, you just think it'd be cool to have grapefruits, but you really don't eat grapefruits, probably shouldn't put a grapefruit in, because they'll end up on the ground at some point, unless you have a good maintenance person or you're doing it yourself. But if you're the kind of person that, uses limes in a lot of cooking or a lot of cocktails and things like that, and you're going to use a decent amount of them, or you have friends or family that'll take some, heck yeah, put a lime tree in. There's no question about it. So it's just kind of understanding what you want the most of.
And make sure that it's not just aspirational, that you're actually going to use it and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up here, there was oranges and tangerine trees in the neighborhood I grew up in. And of course the neighbors would let us have them. I would eat so many oranges in a day, my teeth would ache. So much acid, and I think about that now, like, holy moly, what was I was eating 40 of those a day probably. But it's such a cool treat to have that growing up here that you kind of take it for granted.
I was going to say, I think we take it for granted here. So in terms of the weather, now that it's changed and we're now into cooler temps and it's beautiful here, what should we be planting? What should we be thinking about?
Boy, deciduous trees are fantastic to plant now. They're putting their energy into, really, they drop their leaves essentially to stay alive. They'll root a lot better for you going into spring and grow really, really well going into spring and into summer this next year. So you kind of get a head start on that heat. Most palm trees right now, palm trees are like grass, they grow year round. So you can put those in right now and get that done very, very well. Any agave, that kind of thing can still be planted now. They really don't show a big boom until we get hot again. But again, you get ahead of that heat and so on. So if somebody has a hot spot, something that's burnt last year, something that's maybe getting radiating heat, reflected heat, those kind of things, plant them now. It's kind of ideal.
So they can take root.
Got it.
Well, clearly a very successful and profitable organization, given the national expansion. How do you give back to the community? What are some of the things that Moon Valley Nursery and yourself are involved in here in the Valley?
Sure. Well, I'd say initially over the years, it was doing a lot of things for like Boy Scouts and schools, churches, things like that. The occasional person from the municipality would come in and need something, ask for something, we'd help out with. That's grown. We're actually kind of actively looking for those things nowadays. And, being throughout the nation now, we have a little bit bigger footprint to do those things. So if that's kind of a neat outlet for us. If we ever grow a product that we maybe grew that's no longer in style, a lot of times those are fantastic for donations. So we get a lot of requests for those. And if the city's putting in a certain species, it might not be popular for homeowners, but it might be for a city. So that helps. And just anything we can. We do a lot of educational classes. We see a lot of teachers and students and stuff come through the nurseries, and a lot of kids, things like that. So those are kind of fun to be a part of. And I think about my own kids being able to take plants home and seeds home and let them grow it and see it and so on. It's kind of nice to be able to do that and help out there.
It is. And it's not a screen.
Yeah. And it's, I think the coolest thing we do anymore is still some of those old school things we did from 20 plus years ago. It's just the local things. When we get, the Ronald McDonald House comes in through one of the high schools here locally and that, and a bunch of kids will go out and do a bunch of work on these homes and put a bunch of stuff in and upgrade these houses or build and so on these houses. They're coming to us for plants. It's pretty cool to see some younger students get out and do that. And then we're a part of it by being able to help with donate plants and get those to them to do it, or soils or whatever it is they're looking for.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for the amount of work that you're doing outside of just the business model, but in the community. I think it's really telling and certainly needed.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for spending so much time with us today. We're going to do a quick lightning round with you.
Sure.
The first one I think we know the answer to, but we'll start with that. First job, maybe it wasn't the tree lot.
Oh, actually, first job is working for my father pouring concrete.
Oh. So what'd you learn?
That I don't like pouring concrete. There's a lot of work. And I remember he had his own construction company, and he made a point to me, would you like to do this the rest of your life, or do you want to go get a good education and find a good job? And I'll tell you what, I learned real fast what I wanted to do or not do. And a lot of respect for the guys doing that kind of work, because it is literally backbreaking. It's tough work.
A lot of respect for Dad, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's absolutely steered me in the right direction. It was a good help.
So native of Arizona, and I can understand why. This is such a beautiful place. But if you couldn't live here, where would you live?
Oh boy, I get to travel actually a little bit to some of our other cities and see some cool communities. I kind of like the Dallas and Austin area a little bit, in Texas, pretty cool spots. Traffic in California is probably the one thing I'd say that keeps me away from saying that. Of course, the beach and stuff's nice, but and if it wasn't for work and I could just live anywhere, Northern Arizona, no question about it.
There you go.
I love the pine trees. I love all the deciduous trees and stuff there. If I could go up there and just have that cooler temperature and be out hiking and that, it'd be amazing. Yeah,
you can't go wrong with Northern Arizona. Yeah. And then the final one, and you kind of hit it a little bit, but you could go to one of the nurseries and say, one thing that I love, my favorite thing that we have, what would it be?
Ooh, date palms, if I had to say my favorite thing.
Date palms?
Yeah. They're to me, they're the coolest palms. They're super drought tolerant. When you think of like the tree in the Middle East with the little pond in a cartoon, the tree that's above it,
the oasis,
palm, right? Okay. The oasis. So they're very drought tolerant, all things considered, and super classy, super high end. When you go to a resort around town, you see date palms. You go to a really nice, really well built home, you see date palms. They're beautiful. So I love them. I think they make great statement pieces. That's my favorite tree that we have, sell, and people put in.
Now, do you have to like dates when they?
You don't have to. I personally do.
Okay.
They're like eating candy.
They're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate the time and obviously all of the work you're doing and the advice. And we'll have you back again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, and appreciate your time as well.